Hello, everybody. This is Susan Kokinda with your Midweek update. Today is September 18th, 3 days since the second attempted assassination of Donald Trump. On Monday, Promethean Action posted a statement which said, quote, "This White House is responsible for Butler and Palm Beach. This White House must fix it and do so immediately, lest we lose the nation. It makes clear that it is Kamala Harris and Joe Biden and their minions who have created the environment for this. Not only must the American people call on the White House directly to account for this ongoing threat, but they must join their voices with those like Senator Tommy Tuberville, who are calling for the White House to provide military-level security around Donald Trump. I'm going to return to what that means a little later in this update. But please go to the Promethean Action website and sign up for our newsletter to get immediate updates. Now, between Sunday's second attempt on Donald Trump's life and today's update, I had the opportunity to see the recently released movie Reagan. For those of you who haven't seen it, the movie begins with the March 1981 assassination attempt on Ronald Reagan, less than 3 months into his first term. I was covering a hearing in the Senate Energy Committee on Capitol Hill that day, when the hearing was abruptly shut down by the news of the shooting. I had press credentials, and I went to George Washington Hospital to join the rest of the press in an auditorium, waiting to learn whether the newly elected president would survive. He did, and Ronald Reagan would go on to change history with his March 23, 1983 announcement of the Strategic Defense Initiative. The main arc of the new movie, in which Dennis Quaid does an extraordinary job of becoming Ronald Reagan, is how Reagan's policies, grounded in his unwavering support for the SDI, brought down the Soviet Union. The movie highlights Reagan's desire to eliminate nuclear weapons because of the threat they pose to mankind. And it also shows that President John F. Kennedy had to similarly grapple with the consequences of nuclear Armageddon. Now, let's go back to today. Donald Trump does not give a speech in which he doesn't warn of the danger of nuclear war, as he did yesterday at his town hall meeting in Flint, Michigan. He has continually pledged to revive and actually build Ronald Reagan's SDI missile defense shield, making clear that the technologies which did not exist in the 1980s now exist. So put all of that together. You have 3 presidents, 1 Democrat and 2 Republicans, both of whom used to be Democrats, who publicly and viscerally recognized the threat of nuclear annihilation and who sought to avoid it through diplomacy and or by rejecting the insane doctrine of mutually assured destruction. In the case of Reagan and now Trump, they have put forward a contrary policy of mutually assured survival to shift our military doctrine from one of offense only to one of being able to defend ourselves from nuclear weapons by using new physical principles. And all 3 of those presidents were targets of assassins' bullets. Kennedy and later his brother were killed. Reagan and Trump in the first attempt survived what Detroit pastor Lorenzo Sewell has called the millimeter miracle. There is a direct relationship between those who reject nuclear annihilation and the murder or attempted murder of our presidents. You won't get a better understanding of how the oligarchy has developed and deployed the MAD doctrine as the ultimate weapon to destroy the nation state than Tony Pappert's historical dive into the British origins of these policies in Promethean Action's most recent Saturday class. The second part of that class covers our inside story of Reagan's adoption of the SDI, main aspects of which the Reagan movie doesn't go into. And the threat of nuclear war is one of the driving elements in the political realignment which our country is now undergoing. Yesterday, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and Donald Trump Jr. co-authored an op-ed in The Hill. Now, think about that. RFK Jr. and Donald Trump Jr. The op-ed is entitled, "Negotiate with Moscow to End the Ukraine War and Prevent Nuclear Devastation." It focuses on the Biden administration's current consideration of allowing Ukraine to use NATO-provided long-range precision weapons against targets deep inside Russia, a policy which British Prime Minister Keir Starmer demanded in his visit to the United States last week. Kennedy and Trump Jr. warn, quote, "Such a decision would put the world at greater risk of nuclear conflagration than at any time since the Cuban Missile Crisis." Add to that yesterday's events in Lebanon with exploding pagers, and this which heightens the threat that the Mideast is also another step closer to out-of-control war. So please go to Promethean Action and sign up for our newsletter and Barbara's Saturday wrap-up as we continue our coverage of this. Now, on the other hand, you have Kamala Harris, who is so oblivious to strategic reality that she doesn't know that the United States has soldiers deployed in combat zones. Recent memes portraying her as Dr. Strangelove are frighteningly accurate. And just to underscore the political realignment aspect of this, let's not forget how Kamala has been embraced by the entire neocon elite in the United States, led by the Cheneys. So let's go back to the second assassination attempt against President Trump this last Sunday in Palm Beach and put it in the above context. As Trump in his speech in Flint, Michigan said yesterday, only consequential presidents get shot at. It's obvious that there are intelligence community components to these attempted assassinations. In a town hall with Tucker Carlson in Milwaukee yesterday, Bobby Kennedy Jr. described again Lee Harvey Oswald's ties to the CIA and, of course, Alan Dulles' role in the Warren Commission cover-up. You look at the now arrested attempted assassin from Sunday, Ryan Ruth. His ties to the intelligence community are right out there in the open. His connections to Ukraine and to Iran. That, in and of itself, demands military-style protection for President Trump. But if, as we document in our dossier entitled, "It is the British who murder our presidents," you have to consider complicity from inside the Anglo-American intelligence establishment itself. Last week, I reported on the extraordinary and unprecedented joint public appearance between the head of MI6, Richard Moore, and U.S. CIA Director William Burns as they continued their war rhetoric escalation against Russia. And then, of course, there was the Starmer visit itself on Friday, which threatens an escalation beyond rhetoric. The threat to Trump comes not from lone or deranged assassins. It is Trump's opposition to the neocon policies and other imperial policies that put him in the crosshairs. If the threat is coming from state actors, then a different level of security for Donald Trump is what is called for. That is why giving more money to the Secret Service isn't going to cut it. In their new, woke, DEI incarnation, they are simply not equipped to deal with this. Even putting aside the question of whether there's a mole in the Secret Service, as some are suggesting. What Donald Trump needs is a different level of security. As Blackwater's Eric Prince outlined on Steve Bannon's War Room yesterday, and along the lines of what Senator Tuberville has called for. You need people who are trained to think as professional assassins to stop a professional assassin. Barbara Boyd has coverage of this on our website today. Also, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis' announced state investigation of the attempted assassination is a welcome and important step. DeSantis pointedly noted that it wasn't a good idea to put the FBI, the agency trying to eliminate Donald Trump by lawfare, in charge of investigating his potential assassin. That's one level. The other is, as our statement says, to lay the blame directly at the feet of those who, like Kamala Harris and Joe Biden, continue to push the Donald Trump is a threat to democracy propaganda line at the top of their lungs. In his town hall with Tucker Carlson yesterday, RFK Jr. pointed out the similar climate of anger and poison that had been directed against JFK for shutting down the war with Russia. There was a wanted dead or alive advertisement in the Dallas newspapers the day of the assassination. So Trump, J.D. Vance, Elon Musk, and others continue to make clear that it is the Democratic narrative that creates the climate for further attacks. And so must the American people make clear to their elected representatives and the White House in what must be a drumbeat for calls for military-level security for the president. But I want to wrap up with the other important aspect of what must be done to protect Donald Trump and return him to the White House. That is, break the controlled environment. In the Tucker discussion yesterday, RFK Jr. goes through an extensive discussion of the PSYOPs mind control operations that the intelligence community has created and deployed throughout the post-war period, operations which have obviously reached a crescendo in recent decades. Tucker asks him, so how do you break the spell? RFK Jr. replies, reject the lies and tell the truth. What he is saying is break the controlled environment. But there has to be another dimension to that, beyond just rejecting the lying, dystopian, totalitarian view of the elites. There has to be a clearly articulated positive alternative. Donald Trump, with his hands-on shaping of the new Republican Party, has given us that. A vision of a revival of what we are calling the American System 2.0. His policies are summarized in the 20 promises which introduced the platform, and which everyone campaigning for Donald Trump should have copies of. Trump articulated his vision again yesterday in Flint before an audience which included a very visible contingent of auto workers. As does the platform, Trump spoke of restoring the United States as a manufacturing superpower with tariffs, energy independence, and good-paying jobs. Our job is to magnify that vision, to fill it out, and to spread it. Go to the Promethean Action website to learn about the plans to spread this message to the American people. This has been your Midweek Update. Thanks for listening.
Hey there. Don't forget to follow us here on Rumble. And please take a moment and subscribe to our free newsletter at prometheanaction.com.